Imagine for a moment that the story of Jesus you've been told your entire life was only one version, a version filtered, edited, and authorized not by heaven, but by empire. Now imagine that the real message, the one hidden for nearly 2,000 years, was never about fear, guilt, or blind obedience, but about something far more dangerous. What if Jesus never came to start a religion, but to awaken something buried deep within you? What if the kingdom of God isn't a place you go after death, but a divine state of consciousness you enter while alive? This isn't speculation. This isn't fantasy. This is what ancient, banned scriptures, hidden for centuries and unearthed in the deserts of Egypt, have revealed. A Jesus who didn't ask for worship, but offered transformation. A teacher who didn't build altars, but tore them down so you could find God within. If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. Gospel of Thomas. This is the message they tried to bury, and for good reason. Because if you knew the divine spark already lived inside you, if you remembered your soul was never separate from the source, then no church could own you, no empire could control you, no fear could enslave you. That's why they silenced Mary Magdalene. That's why they burned the Gnostic Gospels. That's why this message was called heresy. But the truth, it doesn't die. It waits. And now, it's rising. So I invite you, no, I urge you, to stay with me, because in the final part of this journey, we'll uncover the most powerful teaching Jesus ever gave, a forbidden truth so bold it could shatter the illusion of separation forever. Before we begin, do this. Comment right now, I am ready to awaken the Christ within me. Like this video, subscribe, and share this message if it stirs something deep inside you, because the silence is over and the forgotten gospel is calling. Let's go back, way back. The year is 325 AD. The Roman Empire, once a brutal enemy of early Christians, is now making an unexpected move. Emperor Constantine, the most powerful man in the world, has just declared Christianity legal. But he doesn't stop there. He wants to make it the official religion of the empire. To do that, he needs one thing: control. Because in the early days, Christianity wasn't one unified belief system. It was a vibrant, diverse movement. Some followed Paul, some followed Peter, some followed Mary Magdalene, and others followed hidden teachers whose names have been erased. But the one thing they all shared was this: Christianity wasn't about power. It was about transformation, about awakening. That had to change. So Constantine called a council, the First Council of Nicaea, not to preserve the truth of Jesus, but to standardize it, to choose which stories were allowed and which would be silenced forever. And from that moment on, the greatest cover-up in Christian history began. Books that spoke of inner divinity, gone. Writings that empowered the individual, branded heresy. Voices that challenged the authority of bishops and kings, erased. What was left? A version of Jesus that served the empire. One that told people to obey, to fear, and to wait for salvation from outside. But here's what they didn't count on. Fragments survived, hidden in clay jars in the deserts of Egypt. Whispers of a different Jesus, a freer Jesus, would reemerge centuries later in a discovery known as the Nag Hammadi Library. And when those lost Gospels were translated, something stunning came to light. Jesus didn't say, "Follow the church." He said, "The kingdom is within you, and it is outside you." Gospel of Thomas. He didn't say, "Only through me can you be saved." He said, "If you bring forth what is within you, What you bring forth will save you." And suddenly, the pieces started to shift. This wasn't a religion of obedience. It was a path of remembrance, a return to something already alive inside you. And now, we must ask the question they never wanted us to ask. Why would the church, who claimed to protect the words of Jesus, go to such lengths to erase so many of them? The answer, of course, is power, because a person who knows God lives within them cannot be ruled by fear, cannot be controlled by dogma, cannot be bought, silenced, or tamed. That kind of human is dangerous. That kind of soul is free. And so, the erasure began. But what was lost is now rising again. And what we'll uncover next is even more revolutionary: who Jesus really was, according to the banned Gospels.
What if the version of Jesus most people know wasn't the original? What if the real Jesus, the one who walked the dusty roads of Galilee, who spoke in riddles and silence, who healed not just bodies but minds, was far more mystical than anyone dared to admit? The truth is, some of his most powerful words never made it into the Bible you grew up with. They were buried, literally. In 1945, in the deserts near a village called Nag Hammadi in Egypt, a group of farmers stumbled on something strange. Inside a sealed clay jar were dozens of ancient scrolls, texts untouched for over 1,600 years. They had names like the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. These weren't the wild ravings of outsiders. These were early Christian writings that painted a very different picture of Jesus. Not as a distant divine king demanding worship, but as a mystical teacher guiding each of us back to the divine spark already within. Let's begin with the Gospel of Thomas. It opens with this astonishing line: "Whoever finds the meaning of these words will not taste death." There are no miracles here, no virgin birth, no crucifixion story, just 114 short sayings, like Zen koans, designed not to inform, but to awaken. In one, Jesus says, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you." He wasn't pointing to himself as the answer. He was pointing to you. And then there's the Gospel of Philip, which speaks of resurrection, not as something that happens after death, but something you must experience while alive. Those who say they will die first and then rise are in error. If they do not receive the resurrection while they live, they will receive nothing when they die. This is radical. It means salvation is not an event. It's not a transaction. It's a transformation of consciousness. The Gospel of Philip also speaks of sacred union, not just between lovers, but between the masculine and the feminine, the human and the divine. It suggests that to truly know God, you must become whole within. And then there's Mary. The Gospel of Mary Magdalene, found in fragments in the 19th century, reveals her as more than a witness. She's not just present, she's leading. After Jesus' death, the other disciples are afraid and confused. It is Mary who reminds them what the Master taught. She shares visions, wisdom Jesus gave her in private. And when Peter questions her authority, she stands firm. This gospel was buried too. Why? Because it showed that truth didn't belong to men alone, that divine knowledge could come through a woman, that Christ wasn't found in dogma, but in direct experience. And suddenly, the image of Jesus begins to change. Not a figure on a throne, but a mirror, a guide, a revealer of what's already inside you. That's why these Gospels were labeled dangerous. Not because they were false, but because they were free. They didn't require priests. They didn't demand blind belief. They pointed inward. And now they're returning, calling to those ready to hear, not just with the ears, but with the soul. But here's the real question. If this is who Jesus truly was, then what else has been hidden? In the next part, we'll explore the boldest truth of all, that Christ wasn't a title reserved for one man, but a state of consciousness meant for every soul.
Let's pause and breathe for a moment, because what we're about to explore is not just ancient theology, it's personal. If the lost Gospels are true, if Jesus didn't just come to be worshipped, but to awaken, then we have to ask something radical. What if the Christ wasn't his last name? What if it was a name for something we're all meant to become? This changes everything, because it means Jesus didn't come to make us feel small. He came to remind us we were never separate from God in the first place. This is what mystics and teachers across time have called the Christ within, a divine spark, a sacred seed planted in every soul waiting to be remembered. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says, "The kingdom is within you, and it is outside you." When you make the inner as the outer and the outer as the inner, then you will enter the kingdom. This isn't dogma. This is mysticism. He wasn't pointing to the sky. He was pointing to you. Carl Jung called it the Christ archetype, the blueprint of wholeness already within the human psyche. Eckhart Tolle called it presence, the eternal stillness behind thought. Early Gnostic Christians simply called it gnosis, direct, living knowledge of the divine. And here's the part the Empire didn't want you to know. You don't need permission to access it. You don't need to earn it through fear or guilt. It's not something you get after you die. It's something you awaken to while you're still alive. But for that to happen, something has to die. Not your body, but the illusion, the voice that says you're not enough, that you're broken, that you're guilty, shameful, and separate from God. That voice was never yours to begin with. It was given to you by systems built on control. Because here's the truth. A person who knows the Christ lives within them is not easy to manipulate. They do not need an external priest, a temple, or a hierarchy to feel holy. They carry the sacred wherever they go. And that's dangerous. To religion, to empire, to every system that feeds off of spiritual dependency. That's why this idea was buried. Not because it was wrong, but because it was liberating. You will do greater things than I, Jesus said in John 14, verse 12. He wasn't being poetic. He was speaking as a mirror. I am the light that is over all things. From me all things came forth, and to me all things return. Jesus didn't come to keep you worshiping at a distance. He came to ignite you, to show you who you really are beneath the layers of illusion, to say you were never lost, just asleep. And now you're waking up. But that awakening can't be complete without one thing the Church tried hardest to erase: the Divine Feminine, the other half of the Christ, the voice they silenced, but could never destroy.
Let's return for a moment to a scene we all think we know. Jesus has just risen from the tomb. The stone is rolled away. And who is the very first to see him? Not Peter, not John, but Mary Magdalene. She is the one who stays, who weeps, who listens. And when he speaks her name, Mary, she recognizes him. She doesn't run, she doesn't doubt, she remembers. But somewhere along the road of history, her memory was rewritten. She was not remembered as a disciple, a mystic, a teacher. She was labeled a prostitute, a sinner, an outsider. Why? Because she carried something the early church could not accept: power. Not political power, not military strength, but the sacred power of the feminine, the power of direct revelation. In the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, a text found in fragments in the 19th century, Mary is not silent. She speaks, and what she reveals is stunning. After Jesus dies, the male disciples are frightened and confused. It is Mary who comforts them. It is Mary who reminds them of what the Master taught. And it is Mary who shares a vision she received from Jesus himself, a vision of the soul's journey, not through hellfire or judgment, but through 7 inner stages of liberation. But Peter challenges her. He says, "Did he really speak these things to a woman?" And yet she stands firm, because the truth inside her is too strong to silence. This is not just a historical footnote. It is a window into what was erased. Mary represents more than one person. She represents the divine feminine, the part of God that nurtures, receives, heals, and remembers, the part that's been cast aside for centuries. In Gnostic texts, this feminine wisdom was called Sophia. In Jewish mysticism, she is Shekinah, the indwelling presence of God. In Hinduism, she is Shakti, the sacred force of the universe. She has many names, but her essence is the same. And just like Mary, her voice has been suppressed, not because it wasn't real, but because it was too powerful for systems built by men, for men. Because here's the truth: a Christ without the feminine is incomplete. You cannot resurrect without the womb. You cannot ascend without the ground. When the male and the female become one, then you will enter the kingdom. Gospel of Thomas. This isn't just spiritual poetry. It's an invitation to wholeness, to reclaim the parts of ourselves, softness, intuition, emotion, nurturing, that were labeled weak. To understand that the path to the divine is not up or out, but inward and balanced. And in this balance, Mary Magdalene was never meant to be a background character. She was the mirror of the Christ, the keeper of inner wisdom, the teacher of the teachers. So the question we must ask is not, was Mary Magdalene more than we were told? The question is, what happens to the world when we remember her? Because when we restore the feminine, we restore the sacred. And only then, only in that union, can the full light of Christ consciousness awaken. But history didn't just erase Mary. It tried to erase all who dared to remember the divine on their own terms. In the next part, we'll journey through the stories of mystics, rebels, and seekers, souls who carried the forbidden fire through the darkest times and paid the price for keeping it alive.
Not everyone forgot. Even as the church tried to erase the sacred feminine, even as it buried the mystical teachings of Jesus, some remembered. They didn't wear robes of gold. They didn't sit on thrones. They weren't given titles or power, but they carried something far more dangerous: a living flame. Across time, across continents, these were the ones who refused to let the light go out. They weren't followers, they were rememberers. Let's start in the early centuries, after the death of Jesus, when the Roman Empire merged with the Church. The Gnostics, early Christians who believed in direct access to the divine, were hunted. They taught that the body was a temple,
that the soul's journey was inward, and that salvation came not through ritual, but through gnosis, personal knowledge of God. For this they were labeled heretics. Their texts were burned, their communities dissolved, but the fire did not die. Centuries later, in southern France, a group arose that carried that same light. They were called the Cathars. They believed in reincarnation, in the divine feminine, in the possibility of union with God, without a priest, without a church, without fear. They gathered in homes, in caves, under starlight. They sang, they healed, they shared bread, and they called themselves the Pure Ones. But in the eyes of the Church, they were a threat too great to ignore. So in the 13th century, Pope Innocent III launched a crusade, not against foreign armies, but against these peaceful seekers. Tens of thousands were slaughtered, entire villages burned to the ground, and yet the fire did not die. In the deserts of Egypt, the desert fathers and mothers lived in silence and solitude, practicing inner prayer and divine union. In the heart of medieval Europe, Christian mystics like Meister Eckhart and Hildegard of Bingen wrote of the soul's union with God, not through fear, but through direct experience. Hildegard saw visions of the cosmos as divine light. Eckhart said, "The eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me." They spoke a dangerous truth, that the kingdom was within, that God was not somewhere else, He was here, now, inside. They were persecuted, some excommunicated, some silenced, but the fire did not die. Even in other faiths, the same flame flickered. The Sufi mystics of Islam spoke of divine love that burns the ego to ash. The Jewish Kabbalists mapped the soul's ascent through the tree of life. The Buddhists taught of a Buddha nature already present in all beings. Different names, different languages, same fire. Because you can burn the books, you can kill the bodies, but you cannot extinguish truth. It hides in the quiet places, in the songs of grandmothers, in the dreams of children, in the silent knowing of those who never forgot. The fire lives in you too. And now, after centuries of suppression, something incredible is happening. The voices are returning. The scrolls are surfacing. And people around the world are remembering, not because they were told, but because they feel it. That same ancient flame is flickering inside you now. But this journey doesn't end with remembering, because what good is a flame if you don't let it burn? In the final part of this story, we'll explore what resurrection really means, not in myth, not in theology, but in you. What does it mean to rise right here, right now?
So now we arrive at the question everything has been leading to. What is resurrection, really? Is it just a miracle that happened once, long ago? Is it something we're supposed to wait for after death? Or have we misunderstood the entire meaning from the very beginning? In the Gospel of Philip, one of the lost Gospels buried for over 1,000 years, there's a line that's both haunting and liberating. It says, "Those who say they will die first and then rise are in error. If they do not receive the resurrection while they live, when they die, they will receive nothing." Let that settle. Resurrection is not a promise about the future. It's a call to transformation now. It's not about escaping this world. It's about awakening within it, When Jesus spoke of the kingdom of God, he wasn't talking about a place in the sky. He said, "The kingdom is within you, and it is outside you." Gospel of Thomas. "Split a piece of wood, and I am there. Lift a stone, and you will find me." He was describing a state of consciousness, a way of seeing, a way of being. To resurrect is to remember who you are beneath the noise, beneath the fear, the shame, the old beliefs that told you you were unworthy. To resurrect is to bring the divine spark inside you back to life. And just like in any resurrection story, something must die. But it's not your body, it's the illusion. The illusion that you are broken, the illusion that God is far away, the illusion that you need permission to be whole. When those illusions fall away, what remains is the kingdom. And the kingdom is not later. The kingdom is not elsewhere. The kingdom is now. This is what mystics across time have taught, whether they called it enlightenment, awakening, or union. It's not about earning your way to heaven. It's about realizing that heaven has always been inside you. In alchemy, this was called transformation. In Kabbalah, it's the soul's ascent through the tree of life. In the teachings of Jesus, it was resurrection while alive. And once you awaken to it, you begin to see differently. The sacred isn't locked inside temples. It lives in the breath, in the moment, in the stillness between thoughts. You don't have to die to be born again. You just have to remember. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. Rumi. The final heresy, the one empires feared most, is this: you are not separate from God. You never were. That's what Jesus tried to show us. That's why he lived and died and rose again, not to be worshipped, but to be mirrored, so that you could see what's possible when a soul fully remembers who it is. And now, it's your turn. You are not here by accident. You didn't find this message by coincidence. You're waking up because your soul is ready. So I ask you, with reverence, what would your life look like if you lived from this awakened state? What would you stop fearing? Who would you become? Because this isn't just information. This is initiation. The kingdom is not a myth. It's not a metaphor. It's a doorway, and it opens from within.
We've traveled far through hidden scrolls, silenced voices, forbidden truths, and ancient flames that refuse to go out. But now we come to the heart of it all, the final revelation. The secret the church tried to bury, the mystery the empire feared most, is not found in stone temples or sacred texts. It is found in you. Here it is, spoken in whispers through the Gospel of Thomas. I am the light that is over all things. I am all. From me all came forth, and to me all things return. Jesus did not speak these words to set himself apart. He spoke them to show us a mirror, to remind us what lives at the core of every soul. The final revelation is this: you are not separate from God. You never were. The lie of separation was humanity's deepest wound, and the systems of power fed on that wound, telling you that God was far away, that holiness belonged only to a chosen few, that your worth had to be earned. But Jesus came not to enforce that lie. He came to undo it. He showed us that resurrection is not an event. It's a process, a remembering, a return. He taught that the Christ is not a man, but a state of being, a vibration, a sacred flame inside every person who dares to look within and awaken it. You are not here to worship blindly. You are here to embody the truth, to walk the path, not just in belief, but in breath, in action, in love. You are not a sinner in need of rescue. You are a soul in need of remembrance. And once you remember, you become what the world has waited for. Not a follower, but a torch-bearer. You carry forward what Jesus began, not as a religion, but as a revolution of consciousness. This is the forbidden secret, the one that could never be fully erased, because it wasn't written only in books. It was written in your bones, in your breath, in your becoming. The kingdom is within you, and it is outside you. So what now? Now you rise. Not someday, not later, now. You awaken. You remember. You return. You begin to live, not as someone hoping for heaven, but as someone radiating it. Because the real gospel isn't in ancient texts alone. It's in the way you show up, the way you love, the way you carry light into a darkening world. So, if something inside you stirred on this journey, that's not just emotion, that's recognition. That's the Christ within you, calling. So say it out loud, whisper it, type it in the comments below. The kingdom is within me. Like this video, subscribe, share it with those who are ready, because the time of silence is over. The truth is rising, and so are you.